Welcome to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry.
Welcome back to the High Rise, a laid-back, data-back podcast about all things cannabis, where we talk about U.S. MSOs, Canadian LPs, products, and market analysis through the lens of data. And we are here with a very special poolside session at Trailblazers Ojai, and joined by Emily Paxia, as always.
Hi, everyone.
And a very special guest, Kyle Sherman of Flowhub.
Thanks for having me, Cy and Emily. This is the coolest podcast I think I've ever done. Being in person next to a pool, this is really relaxing.
It's not bad, right? It's not bad. I
mean, you guys get paid to do this, or is this?
Yeah, not yet. But if you know any sponsors, send them our way.
Yeah.
I think we should make this more of a permanent thing. It's really not too bad.
Poolside podcasting is definitely a win.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, you're on to something. You have the Poolside FM app, some funky tunes, and then you guys are doing cannabis commentary outdoors. Right. I mean, this is incredible.
It's good. There's some good synchronicity to that.
You both are real trailblazers.
Whoa. They would love that soundbite. Maybe we'll cut that out and see if they can use that.
We're all three of us major trailblazers.
That's right.
I think.
That's right.
I think so.
I mean, why don't we talk about Flowhub and what you guys are all about, and when did you start? Because I've known you for quite some time.
Yeah, the idea for Flowhub came to me in 2014. It was the first year that Colorado had stores open for adult use, operating in a highly regulated environment, right? You coming from Los Angeles, where I lived for a decade, you really had just a lot of sketchy stores, right? These nonprofits operating out of, shopping, malls and things like that. It was just like, strip malls, right? Like just kind of a really sketchy environments, not really professional shopping experiences. There were a couple of decent stores, but they'd get shut down by the DEA, So fast forward to Colorado in 2014, it was a fascinating time. And in 2014, I was working in a grow facility, a manufacturing facility, and a store, a dispensary. And I was running compliance, and it was fascinating because we had to report all this data to the state regulatory body manually, which is nuts, right?
Sure.
I mean, even in that time in 2014, I mean, we really should have been capturing things and sending them over an API to the database. And so I went and met with the Department of Revenue. I said, you guys should open this up, allow third-party providers to send data to the state system instead of manually doing all of this. You'll get better data. It'll be easier for these companies to scale. And so the first thing that the DOR said to me was, well, what's an API? We open up this thing, and I was like, all right, well, we have some work to do,
Oh, boy.
But fast forward, by 2016, we finally, had these endpoints to use. And that was the beginning of Metric becoming kind of this platform for third parties to report to. And now we see that now, of course, across, I think, 14, 16 states or so, Metric has APIs in all these markets. And, so we really, I guess we were trailblazers back then, trying to make things happen. And it was the first time I was ever really involved politically in any way. I never thought that you could actually go change the system by speaking up, but that seemed to work. So it wasn't just us, actually. We went and gathered other dispensaries, dispensary customers of ours, and we said, hey, come on, let's go lobby these folks. So we put a bunch of pressure on the state, and it was a really cool time. I kind of miss the old days a little bit, actually. Now looking back, I'm like, wow, that was so simple. We had one market,
Right.
Yeah, I saw Ben Kovler tweet the other day. He's like, what if these are the good old days? And I think about that sometimes with even back then, because sometimes it just feels so daunting what we're all doing here. But I've been trying to think about that every day. Like, what if this is the good old days? Like,
I think it is.
It is.
I mean, we're still in that first inning.
Yeah.
This is the very beginning.
It really is.
Still.
Never been a better time to get into cannabis.
Oh, my God.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, though, I couldn't imagine coming in now as an entrepreneur, trying to start a business in this really noisy industry with all these markets and the differentiation and how do I have to say I'm really happy that we started when we did because, it's like it was just so much easier. You would go. I remember we had this article in CNN Money, and all I did was went to the press and said that we allowed people, our employees to consume cannabis and for brainstorming. purposes. And of course that blew up everywhere, right?
Sure.
Jimmy Kimmel's, using that in his monologue about Flowhub. And, today, of course, you say something like that and people are like, yeah, so what? Everyone smokes pot,
It's so
but back
true.
then, just recently, right? It was like, the stigma was still so strong. It definitely still is, right? But it was different times, right?
times.
Right? You could.
Very different times.
So.
Totally. And, speaking of times, fast forward to today, and there was an announcement with Flowhub and JAY-Z making an investment.
Oh, yes, I've heard of JAY-Z. Great
Tell me
artist.
about this. Yeah, JAY-Z, I believe.
Yeah, Hova. It's funny. I first of all, I love Jay-Z. I've been listening to Jay since I was a little kid. All of his Blueprint albums, and he's just an incredibly talented artist and an amazing businessman. And so it was funny because I saw, last year Jay sold Tidal to Square, and I thought that was an interesting transaction with Jay joining the board. And I remember Lindsay, my wife, she said, "You got to get Jay involved. That'd be amazing." And I said, "There's no way. There's no way. Get Jay involved. How? I mean, yeah, sure, great pipe dream, right?
Sure.
Lindsay's the real brains behind the operation. Frankly, that's the reality.
How it always
here.
goes.
Yeah, you got to have a strong woman strong partner behind your back, right?
Always.
And so, I ended up getting introduced to his team, and we, it just fast forward, right? It's like it's just amazing how things happen, right? So the timing was good. I think he really understands financial services, the power of payments, the power of point of sale, being that data capture at the lowest level, right? I mean, you're getting granular data at the ground level. You're scanning IDs from the consumers. You see how often they're shopping. You're getting that data back to those owners so they understand when they should staff, right? There's just an amazing power of having all that information and what you can do with it.
Yep.
And, our mission at Flowhub is to make safe cannabis products accessible to every adult on planet Earth.
Yes.
And we do that by empowering these dispensary owners so they can run a healthier, better business and make better decisions and better serve their guests. And so, to have Jay involved is just super, super exciting. It's pretty surreal.
Yeah, and he's done some other stuff in the category. Yeah. I know there was the announcement with the Parent Co.
That's right, yeah.
And at a panel yesterday, the Parent Co. just announced, they not yesterday. This is earlier.
4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
27 days ago, I think.
Yeah, is that what he said? Yeah, Troy Datcher got appointed CEO.
So you're not breaking news on this show.
Not breaking, yeah.
Except for yours.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
That's
I guess,
true,
yeah.
except for yours. But Troy mentioned to the audience before anybody asks, yes, I have met JAY-Z. So before I ask, have you met? I have to ask, huh? Did you get to meet him?
I don't know Jay-Z personally.
You didn't get to meet him?
I don't. I know his team. I know the CEO of Rock Nation. But he wrote a personal check. It's funny. He's just
That's pretty cool.
He's got a lot of investments, right? So I think we're probably one of a million things he's doing. But yeah, he wrote the check.
Wow.
He knows the company. At some point, I'm excited to sit down with Jay.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
Troy,
sure it will happen.
Troy said he had met Jay, but not Beyonce. So
I don't expect to meet Beyonce.
Yeah. Maybe you should beat him to it.
Yeah, I
and then
should.
you could call
I
Troy
should go
and say,
Troy.
Hey,
Hey,
guess what?
Yeah.
I think that is not a package deal from what I understand.
Oh,
I think they write it in that, like, if anyone should kind of like attribute anything to Beyonce to like kind of lean on that power, her star power, that it like breaks the Jay contract. I don't think that was ever brought up with yours because it's a very different thing, but I think with brands that's actually a thing.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. She's her own brand.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was in the entertainment business for nearly a decade, and the IP that an artist holds is their name, their likeness, their music. If they're a musician, right? Their characters if they're an actor and they own those characters, right? Like that's their intellectual property, and I think a lot of artists, they've got to really protect that, right? And so, I think you'll find that most artists they'll give their name out for a project, maybe make an investment, and then you don't see that company like using their music in their ads, right? Because they're two very separate. Now, however, right, like the cool thing about having, I think, someone like Jay on the cap table, and gosh, if you need a connection or you need an introduction, or Rock Nation happens to rep a ton of really amazing artists, it's really easy to go up, make things happen. So, but you still have to pay for it, right? I mean,
sure.
They're a business still, right? So. You get an artist on for a promotion or something on Instagram, you're paying for that.
Right. You mentioned, I mean, I think, JAY-Z is very well known for obviously his media and for his talents. But I think that one of the things when as an investor, I actually really admire his investment and the way he allocates capital. And I mean, you just mentioned the title with Square. I mean, that was a huge opportunity and he jumped right through that. And I think that that was why I was really excited from an investor perspective to see Jay coming in with Flowhub. I mean, there's other point-of-sale platforms or retail optimization platforms in the industry, and I think that his targeting and selection of Flowhub was a really cool endorsement.
Yeah, I agree.
From an investor perspective.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, I'm pretty stoked today, to be honest with you. I mean, it's it feels good to see his name on the cap table and to see it in the media like it is. It's pretty cool, I mean, you do all this hard work. I love that quote Elon Musk says. It's like doing a startup's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss or something, right?
Right.
Anyway, it's so true, and so you got to celebrate the little wins, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's
if
pretty
you
cool.
don't, then you wear out way too easily in this space.
And I don't know about you both. I'd be curious to hear from you, Cy, about this, but I tend to find it's like I celebrate for like a day. Right. And then it's like the next day you kind of are like, it gets muted by all the shit that happens.
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, oh, man, that was such a high yesterday. And then you're like, for every dopamine hit, that high you get, you have like 30 lows that you got to get through, I feel like. So that's the truth of startups.
It is absolutely 100% the truth. Yeah, it's not all glamour, It's a lot of pain.
It's so much pain.
Right.
It really is a lot of pain and anguish.
That's why I think Poolside podcasting, it's like, take this moment. You just have to take the moments that you're given to feel and to kind of revel in what you've created. So one of the things, I was talking to Will Yakowitz because he broke the news really today from Forbes.
In Forbes, yeah.
And he was asking me about why I thought this was an interesting partnership in particular. And I said I thought that there was a great deal of values alignment, and especially around the social equity piece. And so I kind of wanted to hear more about what Flowhub's been working on with that.
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about social equity at Flowhub for a couple of years. It's obviously it's a huge topic in our industry because the war on drugs has completely adversely affected so many communities, and it's just we try to figure out how these states are moving so slowly with their own programs. We start to think, well, what can we do as a private entity? How can we help underrepresented business owners, communities? What can we do? And we really thought about it. And we, last year we said, hey, look, why don't we put together a social equity program where we grant our software license to these social equity holders, license holder, anyone who's been adversely affected by the war on drugs. Let's grant them software for free. Like, let's give them 3 years of free software. Let's help them get off the ground and to compete. We're not going to make money on them. I mean, that's not, but we're here to make a difference. And so we did that. And in the first 3.5 months, we gave away more than $1 million of software to these business owners. And it's a really great feeling to know that we're helping, because you get we get these applications in and you read these stories. And this is just a tremendous help for underrepresented communities have a very tough time raising capital. And it's almost impossible.
Right.
And so any bit helps. And for the people that don't know, it's extremely expensive to get off the ground in this space. Some states more so than others, right? In a state like Oklahoma, you don't, it's very easy to get a license. It's, but there's thousands of dispensaries. Right? Even in a town of 500 people, you might have 5 or 6 dispensaries. Doesn't mean they're all going to do well. In a state like Illinois, right, it's really an expensive startup cost, right? You have more limited license. So it's like these folks need, they need help. And we're really proud about our social equity program. If you go to Google, you type in Flowhub social equity and read about the program. Apply if you fit the criteria, but we're really proud of that. I think that's part of I'm sure why Jay was so excited about the opportunity. He at the parent company, they've got this $10 million social equity fund, and they're deploying working capital into these dispensaries and minority-owned businesses, and I think that was a pretty attractive proposition that we were doing this kind of similar thing. So we're very aligned.
I also think it helps to when they are raising money, when the social equity applicants are raising money, like we already have figured out the software solution, we're going to be compliant, and our capital can go further because that part of our business is covered.
That's right.
And I think that that's really important. And, when we start to, I'm really hoping we're going to start seeing like micro lending programs because a lot of the applicants, it's like one door. And so sometimes it's a really great opportunity to do like a lending package, and then you can get the door open and work through it instead of trying to go out and raise equity and dealing with that because it can be a long and difficult process. And so I think that if that can be a check the box for them when they're going through applying for some of these lending opportunities, like being like, look, we're compliant, we've got this software package. I think it's just another kind of feather in the cap. So I was excited to see it because there's a lot of talk about social equity and not a lot of pragmatism around it. And we all know the government, it makes it harder for the social equity applicants in many, many ways.
Totally.
But as an industry, if we can figure out how can we resource them, even though we're typically, in general, this is an under-resourced industry. Capital is not a commodity like it is in many other sectors. And so it's just really cool to think about how your services can serve the social equity community as they're trying to establish businesses.
Yeah, I hope more private companies step up in the space and just stop talking about it and actually just do something.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, just do something.
Just do something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Even these markets that do have social equity programs, it's certainly not enough just to grant licenses because not only the cost of capital to get started, but the competitive landscape for these operators is very difficult depending on where you're at. I mean, even if you're in a place like Oklahoma, you've got just so many shops. But if you're in a market like California or one of these emerging East Coast markets, you're up against some well-funded organizations that are, deeply staffed with a lot of, smart people.
Raising hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Right. So if they have tools that can help them with this stuff, out of the box, doesn't cost, it does kind of level the playing field. We do something similar with Headset. It's probably not the scale that Flowhub does it, and maybe we should look at that and increase it. But, we provide analytics for these operators so that they can understand their businesses in better ways and make better decisions about, what they do. Great. And, we offer a lot of that right now through grant program to social equity applicants. But, our sense is these are the same tools that, the MSOs are using, and you get to use it. And, they might not have analysts on staff to help them navigate that, but we try and make the tools, simple for everyone to be able to use and get some value out of it and, hopefully be more competitive. So I couldn't agree more. I think more private companies need to kind of step up because getting the licenses, granting the licenses is like just the beginning, you know?
I see a world where this continues to mature. We've talked about this with several groups, but really putting together packages, social equity packages across multiple companies in one package. Mm-hmm. So there's not a whole lot of work that applicant has to deal with. It's like one shop, done.
They don't have to run to Flowhub and Headset and whoever else.
Apply
they just
once,
go one place.
Get it all.
I like that. Maybe we should talk about that.
We should, Let's just do deals by the pool here.
Let's do deals. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, because you're also correct. I mean, the MSOs by standard are big corp organizations now, and they do have the staff to support that process. They have a CTO a lot of time even on staff to or CIO just to review what's going on in terms of what their tech platforms are, but a smaller operator, and I think that's we were just talking about, Erwin saying, the ankle biters, but the difference between Canada and the U.S. is that we all really want small business to win. And so this is right at the cross section of that. It's small business and it's social equity. So I feel like if we can get small business to win in cannabis, then we just stand to do better as a market, and it will drive competition in unique ways because that's where cool things bubble up from small businesses because they can be a little bit more nimble. And their decision making can be they may be the first ones to feature some of the best brands that come out, especially in New York. Some of the social, because it's they don't have a big corporate buying program or an existing relationship with a specific distributor that limits their. There's all kinds of things that happen once you get really big, and it's a lot harder to kind of steer the ship. So, small business to me is incredibly essential to keeping this industry interesting and innovative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
I really see a future where, SMB is powering a lot of this industry. I mean, they are today, right? But I think there's kind of two sides. People either believe deeply that MSOs are going to own the whole thing, and there'll be 6 companies that run the show on the retail side. I really deeply believe that we're going to see a lot of SMB into the future in this industry. I don't think it's all going to be MSOs. You're going to have both, right? But I think a large part of this industry will be powered by these smaller shops, family-owned, operated, right? Maybe they have 3 locations in their community, right? So, I really see a future there.
So much has to do with the
excited about it.
legislation, and I think the MSOs have gotten to such scale because they're in these limited license markets that are, these licenses go for a lot of money if they can get them, and probably harder for SMBs. But when we're thinking about like a market like New York and their legislation, it's pretty good because there's no vertical integration.
That's right.
I don't know what the licensing number is going to look like. I have to imagine, in the hundreds, if not thousands, for the population.
Probably over 1,000, I would imagine, frankly.
Right, which I think is more conducive to that kind of environment that can support SMB type businesses versus, something that's much smaller.
That's right. And you're only able to own up to 3 licenses in New York as of today. And that, that in itself blocks an MSO from being able to do it. So it's just, I think we'll just see more and more of this type of pressure. And, we're still, again, in the beginning phase. So things are going to mature. But I think this is going to be a really SMB heavy industry for a long time.
I think so too. And I think that, again, I often draw the analogy to coffee, and I used to do it just around brands where you had Folgers and Maxwell House, and then the proliferation of all these really cool independent brands on the shelves that you could buy and grind at home, and it's kind of driven by a more enthusiast market or people who have preferences around taste. But I think about it too with Starbucks, and they were everywhere, and same thing with Dunkin' Donuts, they're everywhere, and it seemed like, okay, there's 2 big, massive coffee shops. I guess you could say Pete's on the West
McDonald's is huge.
McDonald's is huge, but then you can point out that there's like Ritual Coffee that comes up, and there's that place I always go. There's like all these places.
Blue Bottle, I guess, is kind of an indie chain.
Yeah, and they pop up. They get 1, 2, 3, and then you get the Fanatic base, and then you can start to become more of a quote unquote chain, but. It's
boutique chains.
Yeah, boutique chains with amazing margins, not unlike cannabis. And I think that you can think about how that could happen in this market. So it's not a foregone conclusion that it's 6 companies that rule the day here. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see a lot of these brands mature. I think, when I look at across all the brands, to me, Cookies seems to probably be the most prolific retail brand out there, where people go and they'll spend double what they would spend at another store to buy at a Cookies location. Yep. And, it's fascinating to see what Burner has built there. It's a phenomenal business. Phenomenal brand. You see people walking around with Cookies, clothing. And so I'm excited to see what other brands kind of start to pop up like a Cookies that capture the heart and minds of consumers and the different segments, right? Cookies has a very particular segment they go after.
Sure.
But there are so many other segments, right? We've got some customers who focus, there could be the customer that focuses on the 30 plus female, and that's a very specific shopping experience. Then you go over and you see that, we're kind of the more country, indie, we sell art in the store plus cannabis, right? So it's interesting to see these different retail brands, but I'll say Cookies seems to be the one that you find really is the first established brand that people will seek out and go to over another brand, 100%. Which is fascinating. I mean, people will go in and go, I want Cookies gelato. I want, I want that specific strain that I know is Cookies, right? And it's amazing to see that.
Yeah,
Limoncello number 19, great strain.
They've had a lot of
rosé.
Yeah,
I think the merchandising side, they're in markets before they're in markets, in the sense of you see their brand at skate shops and things like that, right? So people are wearing it already, like a Supreme, and then when the stores open up in an area where they're at, I think people just gravitate because they know the brand already. So I think it's a very clever kind of branding exercise that they're doing.
And one of the things that they do really well, and I'm kind of curious to hear your point of view on this, is that they name their strains such juicy names where you're your mouth waters when you hear them. It could be like banana cream pie. Yeah. And you're a
lot of dessert strains.
Right. Orange Sequoia, right. Limoncello, rosé, right? So you get this visceral reaction to hearing that, and you salivate over. You go, I want that. I want to be high with that strain.
Cereal milk.
Cereal milk. Bingo.
It hits it so hard.
That's sugary. It's exciting. It's breakfast.
Nostalgic.
Yeah. In your data, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but in your data, do you see that certain strains and strain names sell better than others?
Yeah, definitely we see it. I mean, in a market like California, strains like wedding cake do really well. So
Sounds
it's
so good.
same vibe.
Vanilla.
I don't think it's a cookies
Too sweet,
cookies
amazing.
genetics, but I mean it's like
Right.
that same spirit, right? Where it just sounds pretty tasty.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a lot in the naming, especially with newer strains. I mean, there's all the heritage stuff that's been around forever, but when these new ones are
Turban
coming
poison,
out,
like
sour
like a land race.
diesel,
Alaskan Thunderfuck. Like, no,
Right.
thanks.
right?
Well, I'm just trying to get a little high before dinner.
I don't need to get
I'm at
whatever that
right.
is.
I'm at my parents' house. Jesus.
Rein it in. I just want a little tangy dream. I don't know.
Yeah. Something really funny about Alaskan Thunderfuck, I have to tell you, one of our customers shared a track from Afro Man with us recently, and it has Flowhub in it. He calls out
What?
Oh, that's
using my Flowhub software. That's what he says.
No,
in this.
he did not.
Yes, I got to show you this track. It's hilarious. I forget the name. It's Afro Man who did "Cause I Got High." Cause I got high.
Who raps about
Man.
software?
I know. Well, it's in there. So I thought this is good. They showed me the clip. I thought this is fantastic. Anyway, I just remembered the Alaskan Thunderfuck thing because it's in that
That's
song.
amazing.
He says Alaskan Thunderfuck, I believe, in the
Yeah.
song as well.
you've made it when you get dropped in a hip hop song. for
Jeez
sure.
Louise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man, Jay-Z, man. Maybe
And-
that,
Maybe,
Yeah,
I know.
that's-
I'm like, let's get the head
get
hit
Hova
track
in there.
going. Yeah.
That wasn't in the term sheet.
yeah, that wasn't in the term sheet.
No.
Unfortunately.
Next time.
Complimentary rap song.
Yeah. One shout out.
One shout
Just
out.
one, right?
That's it. It'll cost you.
Yeah, so I guess the lesson learned here is, name your strains.
Yeah.
Juicy names. Juicy fruit.
names.
Yeah.
I think it's right.
They're almost brands into themselves in
Yeah.
a way.
Right. Hey, like from the Leafly days, right?
Sure.
Like, do you now see these? You said they're kind of like the old heritage names and this new class of names. I mean, did you see that happen while you were still at Leafly, or was this all very recent?
Pretty recent, actually. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we started Headset about 5 years ago, and so even then, it was still mostly heritage. I think some stuff was coming up. There was like Girl Scout cookies. That was like.
Well, that's
just-
Burner, right? Isn't that the
Yeah.
beginning of alleged?
Alleged. But yeah, maybe.
yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
probably.
Again, maybe the start of like the desserty type naming for these strains. But yeah, we really didn't see much of that. It's more of a recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because of the adult use legal markets and just all these brands, genetic houses come in and trying to differentiate, and it's just accelerating it all much more than early days at Leafly. When it was
Yeah.
primarily medical, adult use was pretty new at the time.
I remember back a couple of years ago, there was a presentation on strain data, and that females tended to pick strains that had fruit names in them. And I was like, is it really? I mean, is that really it? Or is it just that females had not been invited to the table, and so they didn't have the existing relationship with Durban Poison or Sour Diesel or whatever it was at the time? And so their new entry into the market, they were just like, okay, that sounds approachable, and I don't think that's necessarily just, are there cool heads popping up over here?
That was Steve Albaran from Confident Cannabis in the background.
I think he's on the docket.
Yeah, he is.
But I do think, for example, I tried my favorite strain. I think everyone knows is Forbidden Fruit. It's also Tahira's favorite strain.
I thought it was vegan pudding.
No, Forbidden Fruit. And Tahira and I think I tried it just because of the name. So
Why is it your favorite? What about it is so spectacular?
I like the way it feels. I like the way it tastes, and I like the way it feels. And it's so funny. I was just saying this. Sai and I were having the discussion about, indica versus sativa, like what weight lives behind that distinction at this point, which is we both think basically nothing.
Right.
You just get high, yeah.
You just get high. And the thing, but how you feel, and we talked a lot about the impact of the terpene profile, though, which is really important, I think. And we think, and I think we all think, but with the Forbidden Fruit, I thought it was a sativa because I've been framed in my mind that sativa's uplifting, indica's like couch lock. But I found out that it's actually an indica. And I was like, oh, look at that. I like indica. Who knew?
Well, you know what? I find a lot of labeled indicas tend to spin me up a little bit. Like, I feel energized from them. Then I'll crash towards the end. Like, if it was kind of an
interesting.
arc, it kind of is like it brings you up and then it kind of settles you out later.
Yeah.
But I even find like a Ghost Train Haze, which is, supposedly like a heavy sativa.
Right,
It's supposed to be
haze.
racy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely buzzy, but I'm relaxed, and so yeah. I don't know how much weight it really carries. I like the designation of indica, sativa.
I think
hybrid,
everyone does because it makes it really easy to understand. But
Yeah.
I think that it's much more nuanced. It's a combination of the cannabinoids, combination of the terpenes, and less of like the plant makeup and like the shape of the leaves, basically. Because sativa is like a thinner leaf, indica is broader leaf,
bushier,
but yeah, I do think it has a lot to do with just the terpenes, the smells, as well as like the potency of it, more so than just the designation. But it's an easy way for people to talk about it instead of just saying like uplifting strains and others. But it is what it is, and I think it's a language people can use.
Yeah, it's a frame.
Is real quick, is there data on strains that are sold in Headset, like with Candescent? At least they used to do categories where it was like uplifting, relax.
Sure.
I think Veritas does that in Colorado, if I remember correctly. Do you find that certain brands sell better, flower brands sell better because of that designation rather than straight indica sativa?
I'd have to look. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, there are a few organizations that do that, and even beyond flower, right, with edibles and things like that, they'll put relaxed, sleepy, they'll name them like that.
Is that the future?
Maybe. In Canada, I don't think you can do any sort of claims-based branding. Yeah, you can't say stuff like that. Who knows, right?
You can't do anything in Canada. I mean, you can buy packages that you
hardly put your logo on something. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So, guys, I hate to do this, but we got to wrap up soon because
Yes.
I've got to go to my panel.
We've definitely
with the MSOs.
gone over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle.
But maybe just one last question about what do you think is going to surprise us all in the next year in this industry?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, no, I think I can speak from my perspective here. I think we're going to see just better and better consumer experiences leveraging technology. I mean, there's some things that we're in the process of launching that I think are going to fundamentally change the way people pay in store and online. And those small things really change, the feeling you get as a consumer because of the ease, right? Right now, you walk into a store, you've got to, get your card out, you've got to go to an ATM, and there's some really cool things that we're working on to provide a more seamless experience, and that's great for the business owner. It means you don't have to wait in line as a consumer. For the business owner, they get more people through the door. Everyone wins. It's a beautiful thing. So I think, I think it's going to be most surprising over the next probably 2 years, and just how much easier it is going to be a consumer in the space, to go find and discover new products, to go buy those products in store and actually get in and get out pretty quickly. I don't know about you both, but I've had some pretty rough consumer experiences just going into a great store, but like just horribly, full of friction trying to check out.
Yep.
So I think it's just, it's creating a much more seamless experience. So I think that's going to be most surprising for generally the people out there going, oh, wow, it wasn't this easy a couple years ago to buy cannabis.
So kind of an improved retail experience for the consumers is what's going to surprise all of us.
Totally. I mean, think about how easy it is to go into CVS and use Apple Pay on your watch to pay. And you go in, bank, touchless, leave, get out. You get the 7-foot receipt from CVS. That's still the downside. So you have a lot of note paper you get for free there.
Yeah.
But right? I mean, I think we've really been missing that experience in store in this whole time in cannabis. So I'm excited for the future around financial services and consumers and that whole experience.
I think that's great because I think it'll invite more consumers to the table. The retailers will do better, brands will do better, and we'll see bigger basket sizes. So I'm pretty excited to see how technology can actually impact the consumer experience and in turn impact the health of these businesses, which is already very healthy, but could you imagine if it's more efficient? And it'll be fantastic.
And I have to say, like, I see a tide shifting where, back in the day it was all plant touching companies that were getting the capital.
Yeah.
And now at least you're seeing that capital shift into ancillary and, our types of companies. I know you have to leave.
I got to go.
Yeah, well,
Thanks,
Kyle, and congrats again on the announcement today. And everyone can find Flowhub online.
Yeah, we're online. We typically send out mailers on a weekly basis. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
Flowhub.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're on Instagram, all the social sites. Besides TikTok, I still haven't figured out how to do that. We haven't hired a TikTok ambassador yet.
Yeah, got to talk to Mattio Communications.
Yeah, Mattio Communications. Rosie.
She has somebody that TikToks for people.
Awesome.
Okay,
thanks, Kyle.
We'll have to hire that person. All right.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.